I was like standing to this strange lady, kind of confused of like, why am I doing this? Like, how come my mom gave me away to this, even though my mom's standing over there, like right next to me, and then now I have to wait in line with this lady? It was completely confusing to me.
Hello, Kirill. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, guys.
Thank you, Kirill, for joining us. We're excited about learning about you and your story. You are a very, very talented content creator, but also I think your main talent, and we'll dive into it, is being an amazing storyteller, more than content creator maybe, because you can have all the videography skills that you want, but it's all about sharing stories. And I think you have something special about the way you ask questions to your client, guest, and you're an amazing storyteller, and I'm really excited to dive into this, really. The first thing I would like to ask you is, when I was doing my little research before the episode, I went on Instagram, I clicked on the link in your bio, and on the top of the page, just under your picture, you have a message saying, "I'm on a mission to unite the world." Could you tell us a little bit about where this is coming from?
Yeah. I mean, it's coming from a long time searching for my purpose and really bringing conscious awareness into this question of why am I here? It was not clear for a really long time until at some point it finally started to make sense, where you start to realize the path that you walked on thus far, and so basically it's like combining all of the experiences that you've had and then trying to summarize it in one word. And that word that came to me was unity. I realized fairly recently that since I was a kid, I always found myself in between kind of polarities of things. Let's say I would be friends with people who, let's say, might not be friends between each other, but I would, find pleasure in communicating with both of them. And I was able to do that. Often it's not easy to do because, one person can say like, oh, you're like a traitor or something, like you're friends with this person, don't talk to me type thing. But I would always find ways how to stay neutral and not really touch those sensitive topics between those polarities. And I would find value in kind of being engaged with both parties. And then later that also manifested itself not only through people as two different polarities, but also through concepts and ideas. For example, the two big polarities that I'm very passionate about is technology and spirituality. And often those two things are completely separate and opposite, right? Like a spiritual community is usually against of like promoting using technology and becoming more technical, like as a tech society. And then tech people are usually not very spiritual. They don't really pay attention too much about that aspect. And so I find a lot of value in exploring both domains in depth as far as I can see. And then I'm also and the most exciting part for me is to find the bridge. I basically work as a bridge so that the concept of unity comes from me serving as a bridge between those disconnected polarities of things, right? And that creates one cohesive organism that is united,
That's actually a really good point, and I can 100% relate to this example of tech versus spirituality. I've been on a tech side for most of my life. Everything spiritual was weird, crazy people believing weird things that don't make any sense in my head.
Yeah, and often you wouldn't even have an opinion about that. Like, interacted with a lot of tech people, they never even like have an opinion about that. Like they never even think about it. You know what I mean?
No, yeah. And actually, yeah, it's moving to Miami and meeting people there, some mutual friends, some, through some events that we went to, that I opened my mind a little bit to this spiritual side. And I'm probably more towards the techie one, but I am way more open and aware of this other side, and yeah, slowly learning more about it.
Yeah, I think it's our responsibility for those who've kind of experienced both sides and have some overview of those things, is to find ways how to merge the two. I think ultimately all of us have to serve a function of uniting as much as possible things, people. We are as looking at a evolutionary kind of process. In order for us to move to the next level of human evolution, I truly believe that it's absolute requirement to first unite everyone, to first get everyone into a very integrated, cohesive system that allows information flow freely. It's basically, if you have an analogy of a body, a physical body, we have cells that have no problem communicating with each other. If there is some, let's say, a scar or something on the body, the entire body is aware of it. The immune system, the whole nervous system is communicating very effectively to be able to distribute resources, body resources, like the most effectively, right? And so I see the exact same analogy with our Earth is this new organism that's been developing, and in fact, I see the internet being the neural network that basically the communication network between the nodes, between the smallest, let's say like a cell. A human is like a cell, right? And so the next layer of evolution, I see it being as a one new global entity that acts like one organism, and that's the vision that I have for it.
This is very nice to hear in a world, especially at the moment, where most media, a lot of messages that we hear about are about division. A lot of the things that we hear about or read about is pointing at the differences between us and them, whether the two groups is, and hearing you talking about unity this way is really refreshing and really nice to hear, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, in process evolution, they're inherently mistakes that needs to be made, right? Like we can't by basically making mistakes, we're learning what serves us. The mutation of the gene, right? It basically creates all kinds of permutation and variations of the gene mutation, and then only the ones that sustainable will stay around. The rest will just will disappear, and I feel like that's what we've been going through also. Generally speaking, I think humanity is in a much better place, meaning there's much less conflict in a percentage. I mean, yes, we have such much bigger population, so on the like one-to-one basis, we probably do have a lot of types of conflicts, but then the percentage wise, it's certainly been decreasing, and there's certainly been more cohesiveness, and I think internet is playing a big role in having that more of a global mind. We still have a long way to go, but it's certainly been the case. And so I think it's just our job is to bring awareness into those areas that clearly don't work, those areas that separate humans. let's say, politics or media, current media, that they all have what's it called? Like incentives or their own agenda. Yeah, to and so those are basically some externalities of a kind of a consumerism. Western world kind of embracing that model the most. There are a lot of great positive things about capitalism, but there are also things like this. Those are negative externalities that no one have accounted for before we started like really going that route. And so it's responsibility of our generation to steer that ship, and that ship has a lot of momentum and a lot of inertia that we need to consistently pushing it into the direction that we think it needs to go, because otherwise it's just going to go on its own. No one is in charge where that ship is going. There are some players that think they have some control, but actually it's just one large unconscious process that's just moving into the direction that no one have predicted. And so bringing more awareness into where it's going increases the chances of us to stay around as human beings, right? Because if we don't, then we're going to just get extinct, and that's fine for the Earth. For us, it's too bad, but we certainly don't want to go that route.
Yeah.
To dive into now your personal story, you now live in the US, but you were actually born in Belarus.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about your origin country? I don't know much, honestly, about Belarus. Rosie was saying that as well just before we started recording. And so could you give us a little glimpse of how was your childhood over there?
Yeah, I mean, Belarus is a post-Soviet Union country. It's basically, after the Soviet Union collapsed, it was one of the countries that separated from the Soviet Union in 1991. And the childhood basically was a pretty, when you're a child and when you're in it, you don't really know what to compare it with, especially when you have internet or things like that. So you don't feel like, oh, you're struggling or the life is terrible or something like that. But looking back, it was certainly a rough time for people of that time in that place. There was enormous amount of shortage of pretty much everything, food mainly, where people had to have some kind of allowance that the government would give them to buy, let's say, a certain amount of produce, certain amount of, let's say, rice or like potatoes or something. And so I remember actually, I think you would like this story, when I was a kid. So they would basically have an allowance of, depending on what it was, there was more shortage of some things than others. So let's say, I don't exactly remember what was the most shortage of, but let's say in order to buy sugar, they would give you an allowance depending on how many people per family you would have. And so I remember we were at a store and waiting in line for something with my mom. And that line was fairly shorter compared to this other line that was really long. And from what I realized, we already at some point waited in that line for whatever they were trying to buy, like a few days before. So we didn't have to buy that thing. And then we were just waiting for something else. And there was this a stranger lady just came up to my mom. And she was like, can I borrow your son to buy basically a little bit more of that product, whatever it was.
Wow.
And so, my mom, with understanding, she was like, yeah, sure. Like, you can, and so basically I was like standing to this stranger lady, kind of confused of like, why am I doing this? Like, how come my mom gave me away to this, even though my mom's standing over there, like right next to me, and then now I have to wait in line with this lady. Like, it was completely confusing to me. But that was kind of that just gives you a good glimpse of the type of reality we were living. And most people would have, even though we lived in the apartment in the city, all people would have a piece of land somewhere nearby where they would grow their own food because they couldn't afford, not only could they afford, but there was just a shortage of food even to buy, right? And so growing up, I would basically be always helping my parents to go over the weekend, because during the week they would work a lot, and then over the weekend or after work sometimes you would go and work on the land to like make sure your food is growing, to water it or to like irrigate it and stuff. And that's why farming for me, to be honest, is something non-desirable. I was always repelled by that type of work, because it would take away some of my freedom. So imagine I'm in school like during the week, and then I want to go hang out with my friends over the weekend, but I have to like go and have my parents type thing. And so I certainly know a great deal about how to grow stuff. But since my childhood, I never wanted to even get close to that thing, you know.
That's really interesting you say that. Sorry, because that shows it's all about perspective, because I spent a lot of time in the garden with my grandparents, but that was my leisure time. That was my afternoon when you were at school. I was just hanging out with my grandparents, and he was there, and it was just the happy place where I was just playing and eating a sandwich.
Was it?
No, and it's interesting how the same activity, as an adult now, is bringing a totally different vibe and energy to you, just because of the different perspective that we had at this time. It's really interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, really, your perspective really defines your experience. Yeah.
What about in terms of schooling? I have no idea about if schools are good in Belarus. Did you learn English there, or did you learn English afterwards? Like anything about education there? I don't know anything.
Sure. I think education there is pretty solid, especially things like mathematics or physics or sciences are really strong, because I was studying here after, and I would realize that the level of education. So I went to City College at first in the States when I moved here, and then I went to the university. So at City College, you would have to take like calculus and other classes like that. And for me, they were just like so easy. Like it was just, I didn't have to even do like homework really. Like it was just straightforward. And I saw how much people were kind of struggling with those sciences. English wise though, I definitely didn't have much experience and much practice. In fact, I feel like my English teacher kind of almost like gave up on my ability to learn the language. I was a fairly slow, so I was actually a very slow student. I was one of the slowest reader. Like I could read very, very slowly. And so things like literature and history, where you had to read a lot, I was really not good at those subjects. But things like mathematics, where you don't really have to read, it was just like a slow thinking to get to the right thing. It was I was excelling in those things. But generally speaking, I think education there is really good, like world class, I would say. I mean, certainly some of the topics and subjects are outdated and maybe not as relevant. But level of like discipline and level of preparation, like basically they have a good system to exercise your mind. It would be helpful to also not just use old school information to exercise your mind with, but at least they certainly give. And also the system basically, I don't know if forcing the right word, but it's basically I guess for the better word, I can't come up with a better word. It's forcing pretty much everyone to stay above a certain threshold. If you struggling with something, you are not like directly somebody going to go and tell you, but the way the system organized, that you're almost like forced to get much better at whatever you like struggling with, to get like a decent to a decent level. In America, for example, I didn't feel that incentive by the system. Like if you're doing great, so it's easier to stay behind in the States, for example.
Yeah.
It's easier to just get lost and be forgotten. In Belarus, I think it's the communistic mentality where everyone is kind of together. There's certainly benefits of socialistic society. In fact, I feel like the future society is going to be more socialistic, including, if that's even a word, socialistic. Mm. Is that a word?
Sounds right.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I don't know, to be honest, but I would say it. Yeah. So we just have to modify that version of it and incorporate more modern democratic ways of interacting, and also incorporating technology. And in communism, it didn't work because the information was just trickling down from the top. And then, you can't really make that work because you don't really know what happens on the ground. But once you organize yourself in like small communities, and there's a free flow of information, then that system, I believe, could potentially work.
Mm.
So what gave you the opportunity, and also where did the motivation come from to move to the US and to San Francisco?
Yeah. At some point, I got introduced to this European student organization, which actually was founded in France. It's called AEGEE. I forget the Association of something. I forget the exact name for it, but I can probably look it up later. So with that, we would organize what's called like a summer university programs for students from different European cities to visit other European cities. And we had one of the chapters basically in Belarus, where we would have students of different countries visiting Belarus. And that was my exposure to the Western people, Western mentality and stuff. And I knew that I certainly resonate with that type of mentality, and I envisioned myself to certainly, be much closer to that type of lifestyle that they're having. And I knew that Belarus is not the place where I want to spend the rest of my life, basically. And then later, at some point, I had an opportunity. First, actually, I had an opportunity to move to England, and so I stayed there for just a summer before coming to the States. I was kind of like testing things out and see where would I like to grow my roots and stuff. And then I had a certain kind of feelings about not pursuing England. I didn't actually I didn't feel welcomed as an immigrant, as the person that comes to compete for labor on their market, because so they basically I really felt like they are prioritizing their own, which makes sense. America is just a completely different story. Everyone is an immigrant that has a very different history, and then here they don't really care where you're from. They care about how much you get to contribute to whatever everyone is doing. And so I really resonated with that type of way of doing things.
It's interesting to hear that from like a foreigner's perspective, because there is that thing in England about the Polish coming over and stealing all our jobs. Like there's that you hear about it, and then actually to hear it from your side, like that you felt that as well. I know you're not Polish, but the same sort of sentiment and feeling. And I'm really sorry that my country did does that and did that.
No,
And
no.
It's a shame, isn't it?
No,
That
but look, no one is guilty for it. To be honest, it's just
but it's
if you look at it from a macro perspective, a country is like its own organism, right? It's a conceptual like organism that it's like a hive that has its own patterns of behavior. And it has its own interests, and humans are just playing the part, like they're just part of that collective mind in a way. And so all humans are, I have no doubt that without traumas and without like sufferings that people go through, everyone is a really good person. It's just those harmful experiences that sometimes what's the word? Like they almost like pollute someone's mind or delusion. People are becoming delusional about the reality once they go through a particular experience. They think that reality works this way. If, for example, somebody grew up in an environment with a lot of suffering or a lot of violence or something like that, they just embrace that type of reality and think that that's the only version of it. But ultimately, they're just like a reflection of the experiences that they went through. So there's absolutely no. I know that everyone is doing their best at whatever their like opportunities that they've been presented. Even if somebody consciously, let's say, they realize that it's a shitty thing to do to push away immigrants, and they do it. I think they do it for unconscious reasons, like some kind of fear, underlying limited beliefs of some sort. And that's not. I don't necessarily. Say that those parts is really them. It was like almost like inherited. What's really them is that conscious part of them.
That's a very mature and it's a nice way of looking at it, basically. It's a nice way to see people and to understand that it's not them that's doing these things. It's kind of unconscious things that have happened that makes people react certain ways to certain people and situations. And it's very understanding. That's the word, understanding.
It's much easier to live your life with that type of mentality. I've noticed from my personal experience. Everything, knowing that everyone is doing their best at every moment in time, considering that everyone is carrying some amount of weight that's rooted in their, childhood trauma or some kind of cultural traumas or, limited beliefs of some sort. Considering that, we are doing our best with what we've got, basically, with the level of awareness that we have. So that just gives you more compassion. And that's a mental tool that I promote because that promotes more unity, right? Like when you know that everyone is doing their best, you understand them much more, and there's more connection that's been created as a result.
It's also healthy for you and your mental health if you're not carrying around anger and hatred and things for other people who have maybe done you wrong. If you just forgive them and whatever it's. Anyway, coming back to you again, sorry. So how old were you when you moved to the States?
I was 21. I was 21 years old. It was 2008. I am 33, 34? I forget. 87. I was born in 87. How old is that?
Well, 34.
34, here we go.
34,
yeah.
The number now, I mean, I'll probably remember when I turned 40. Like somewhere in between, it's kind of like, whatever.
It really doesn't matter though, does it? It's just, like they say, it's just a number.
I'm more defining myself by how close I am to that perfect kind of vision of how I would like to live my life. That's more valuable for me to kind of just see myself on that path and not really like attaching myself, not really have the expectation and then have how do you call it, like if you don't get there, you feel you don't feel
Well,
good about
disappointed
yourself.
and let down.
Disappointed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like I truly incorporated this belief of doing my best into my operating system that's been totally serving me. Anything that I do that could be done better, I just acknowledge it. And next time I have the opportunity, I will do my best to make it better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was it moving from Belarus to the States, like in terms of culture, food, people, mindset, everything? What were the kind of main differences that you found?
Yeah. Moving was exciting, and it was not hard at all. Like for me, I know that some people are going through a very drastic cultural kind of transition that they have to do a lot of adjustment. I feel like being part of that organization that I mentioned earlier helped me to really already prepare myself for a different way of thinking. Because not only did I organize some of those summer universities in Belarus, I had an opportunity to travel a few times in different, like Netherlands. I was in the Netherlands and Turkey, and there was another something. So basically, I had more exposure in some years to that mentality, and that also helped me to practice speaking. Even though my English was pretty poor, I was already able to like explain myself. I wasn't afraid to like go out there and to try to like communicate something. So that I certainly had an advantage, like comparing to some of my peers who went through a similar transition, moving from Belarus to the States. It was a little harder for some to kind of get used to a completely new way of living your life. So yeah, you know, for me, it was a fairly easy transition, and I had no problem doing whatever it takes to get to where I want to go. So, for example, my first job was a dishwasher, you know, at a restaurant, and I totally didn't feel bad for myself to like start from like the bottom of the ladder. I knew that it's a temporary transitional stage that I'm going to pass fairly quickly, and that's exactly what happened. You know, I started then at the same restaurant helping cook to like prep vegetables. So I was a prep cook for a few months, and then after that, or actually for like a month, because basically my American story started from North Carolina, this small little town called Kill Devil Hills in Outer Banks in North Carolina. And so, yeah, that's how I started working as a dishwasher. And then a month later, I was promoted to a prep cook. And then I was like learning as far as I could, working overtime and just absorbing all of the American experience. It was just fun for me, actually. I didn't really feel like I'm like overworked, even though I was like working crazy hours and I had to bike to work for like 30 minutes and stuff. It was still a really fun, great experience for me. And then the last month I was actually on the line making dishes with the chef. So that was kind of cool. And then after that, I decided to try something different because it was a small little town, like a tourist town and kind of in the middle of nowhere. Especially during winter, there's nothing to do there because it's colder and no tourists are there, no work, not much work is there basically. And I decided to move to San Francisco because I had another friend of mine who was living there already from my hometown, who helped me out with just finding cheap rent and then kind of direct me like where to look for jobs and stuff. And so that's how I moved to the States and then moved to the San Francisco Bay Area and then basically started working at this restaurant also because I already had experience working at a restaurant. You know, I had to like exaggerate a little bit. It's instead of a 1 month working as a chef or whatever, I had to like exaggerate it by a factor of 10 maybe. You know,
everyone does it.
Yeah. But yeah, so, and then I started going to community college, taking classes at City College at San Francisco. At some point I actually had like two jobs. I was in transition. Basically, I had a a security officer at a financial building, sitting at a lobby, and then just watching cameras and making sure nothing goes wrong type thing. It was like a perfect job for being a student, because you can like literally study. And I would work graveyard shifts because those were the only ones available for those who were just kind of starting out without experience. And so I remember like there were a few months pretty brutal. I would work night shift at my security job. Then after that, I would go to the restaurant, do the full shift at a restaurant, and then I would go to college to take some classes after, and then I would go to sleep. It was like, fuck, what did I get myself into?
Oh my God.
But yeah, that was like just a kind of in transition. As I was leaving the restaurant, I had to like, I couldn't just like completely stop there. But yeah, it was pretty fun. Yeah, to do that. Yeah. So, and I guess I can finish a little bit, or like bring you up to now. After that, I finished. So as I was going to community college, I found a few people who were preparing themselves to go to prestigious schools like UC Berkeley or Stanford, and I realized that it's actually possible. The chances are fairly small, like a very small number of people get it, but it's possible, And I was like, if it's possible, I'm just going to go for it. I mean, even though this possible often is in our head, but still, that certainly helped me to get more certainty in that path. And I started kind of getting ready to apply for like prestigious university. I didn't want to go to just any university. I wanted to go to a really good one. So the UC Berkeley was the one that I only applied for. I didn't apply to any other schools but UC Berkeley.
Wow.
And I knew that, the chances are pretty small. And if I don't get it, I'll figure something out. I wasn't like worried about not getting in and like my life is completely ruined. I knew that I would figure something else out. In fact, most of my friends who moved to the States, they didn't really go to university. A lot of them like started businesses and stuff. And they're doing great now, like everyone is fairly successful. So it wasn't like a concern for me, but it was a desirable path that luckily I got accepted to UC Berkeley. And so, I mean, I had pretty much the lowest GPA out of all of the candidates, I would probably say. I mean, it was not like the lowest. I mean, meaning the GPA was still about, what's the highest? Four, right?
I think so. From films, but I really don't know.
Crazy. I already kind of forgot. So mine was probably like 3.6. I mean, it was still pretty high. But to go into like a business school that I was applying for, often people would have like 4.0, like a perfect GPA. They would get all A's in all subjects, basically. But what helped me out a lot is my story. Basically, part of GPA is one of the variables they consider to accept you to the university. But then your personal story, your contribution to community, there are different other factors that play a role into the acceptance rates and stuff. So I got accepted, and then after that, so that was a great experience. Also going through American school and really understanding the culture from within. I think going through school in general in any country gives you a much deeper understanding of culture.
And what did you study there?
Business. I studied business.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then I worked in consulting for Big Four, for Deloitte for a few years for technology consulting. That was also a really cool experience where I would travel to different cool places, and then did a little bit of international travel also. Like one experience that was kind of cool, they flew me to Barcelona for this IoT, Internet of Things conference. Like business class, and like staying in nice hotels, and that wasn't even like work. It was I was basically part of this new emerging team that was focusing on IoT solutions, and we were basically just educating ourselves and building the capability from ground up and I was one of the people that they were training to like expand their practice. And so
nice.
For a decent amount of time, I was not on client work of any kind. I was just internal, going to different conferences and different trainings, and I was like, wow, that's amazing, you know.
Sweet.
Yeah, that was a great.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Was it a bit like hearing about your background in Belarus, where you were temporarily given to another woman so that she could get enough food, and having those struggles to then flying business class across the world to Barcelona, like that must have been a bit of a like wow moment, right? Because
I mean, as happens, sometimes right in the moment you might forget to kind of remind yourself, but I remind myself quite often about like, everything that I've been able to experience thus far. It's been an amazing ride, and it's actually given me a lot of. I think it's such an advantage that I've grew up in in a kind of not so favorable environment. I was able to grow from that. Like nothing. Any kind of challenge for me is not really a big deal. You know what I mean? Like it's something that I just have to resolve. Like it's just another little thing that it's not a big deal basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, in fact, I would say, I know that it's a pretty common or popular belief that in order for you to really strive and have a good life, you have to go through a lot of struggle. That hasn't been my case in like my experience in life, to be honest. Yes, I went through, I mean, even like experiences that I mentioned to you about like working two jobs and going to school and stuff. Even in those moments, I didn't feel like I'm struggling. I was just like, yeah, that's something I have to do. No problems. And I would still like go out and stuff when I could. So for me, it's been a very pleasant and fun ride. I mean, certainly there are bumps along the way, but yeah, it hasn't been like, I don't really have anxiety. I don't have any like suffering of any kind. Like I get maybe sad once in a while, but I never really get depressed, like in fact, I've never experienced depression. I never experienced a moody, I think the most challenging, in fact, mental space that I went through was during my transition from corporate into running my own business. It was like a lot of uncertainty, and the financial uncertainty that certainly was giving me a lot of worries, and my heart, like I wasn't in a kind of open-hearted space for like some months, basically, while I was figuring it out. But yeah, that so far that was kind of the most challenging, and then since then it's been, I mean, before and after and during, like it's been pretty. Yeah, it's been pretty like easy. I don't know, like I know that it triggers some people. Is like, oh, if it's easy, then you're not pushing yourself enough. I think I push myself a decent amount, but I don't take it as like a painful process. I take it as like as just an experience.
I think a lot of that is mindset.
Completely.
You could have been like, oh my God, I had to work 2 jobs and be a student and I didn't sleep, and poor me, this happened, that happened. But then if you see it as like, actually, I was so lucky to have 2 jobs and to be able to study and like educate myself. It's a completely different mindset that completely changes the way that you experience something.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I want to know, go on, Jeremy.
What was the motivation behind leaving your, at the time, very good job? I'm sure making a pretty decent, good amount of money to live what society class as a happy, successful life at a young age as well. What was the motivation behind, I'm going to leave this behind to actually pursue something else?
Yeah, that's just, I was just taking on a new challenge for myself. I knew that there's more to life than a safe, predictable path in in a Western developed country. I mean, that is a very desirable place for a lot of people in the world. Like everyone would give up everything to have that type of experience. But at the same time, I was just looking at maybe other people who are having even better experience. Like for whatever reason, I would never settle for just good. I would always strive for the best. I would always go to shoot for stars. To if I only have one life, why not to go all out basically and not stop along the way. That's basically the motivation to just experience life as fully as I possibly can. And after reaching the comfortable, predictable path in corporate world, it's not motivating to keep going that route, even though it's a comfortable path.
I'm interested. Was it hard for your parents? Because we've spoken to a couple of people that have had a similar thing where they have that, the American dream and the good job and the good money, and then they leave that to pursue their own passions. And sometimes parents are either really supportive or they find it hard because you're doing something that's not quite what they'd planned, or it's not, worry about the future. Were they okay with it? Did they support you, or did they think it was silly that you were leaving the corporate world? And
right. No, I think I gained a lot of respect and trust much earlier, even when I was studying at the university in Belarus, where I left my hometown and went to study at the university there. I was studying economics and accounting, one of the top economic schools in Belarus. I think they were very supportive in anything that I'm doing. So I didn't really get any type of, oh, you should stay here, for example, you shouldn't go to the States, or, oh, you're leaving your job, why don't you just stay because it's a safe path. They trusted my decision making, basically. Yeah, which is good.
It's good that you had their support, because I know it's not the same for everyone.
Right. And then sometimes if I'm right at the beginning of making what could be considered a risky decision, I don't necessarily have to share that with them in that moment. I can share a little bit down the line when it's a little bit more predictable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's some good advice right there.
It's just like you adding extra stress for them, potentially extra stress for yourself, because now you're also feeling responsible for not only yourself but also how they feel. Might as well just wait a little longer and then just tell them once you in a more kind of
better
pretty
place,
stable. So that's been working for me. It's a very personal. For some people, I feel like it really is a personal thing. Like some people like to share that with their parents right away, and then that works for some. For me, I find that it's much easier to just not, especially in the kind of what could be considered a risky endeavor. I'll share with them as I'm not right when I'm stepping into the first, making the first steps, and no one else kind of knows about them, but a little bit later. Yeah.
I'm very impressed by your level of self-awareness and the view you have on life and on everything happening around you. Is that something that you've been developing, recently along years, or have you always, in a sense, always had this mindset even when you were younger, or I'm very curious about that.
I certainly find myself often in moments of stillness and contemplation and thinking. I spend a lot of time thinking, or just being in my own presence. That helps me to to find the right direction or to sense the right direction. I'll give you a good example that makes sense for me. When you're on the highway and you're moving really fast, your focus of attention is like this. You're just paying attention to a very narrow beam where you have to switch your lanes or something like that. And in fact, the faster you go, the more narrow that gets. And then the slower you go, the wider your range of focus becomes, right? And then when you stop, hopefully not on the highway, just generally speaking, when you stop, then you have an opportunity to look 360. And you have an opportunity to assess all of the directions that you can go in 360, right? And so giving yourself the time for stillness, time to reassess where you are, even though, you might have set your mind on like going to go to that goal, you have to always adapt to new information, basically. We always get, the world is not static. It's always changing. And so we have to always be on the lookout for opportunities to adapt. And so I feel like I've been really good at adapting. Like I'm a very well adapted person, adaptable. Yeah.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, I would define you as a storyteller. If anyone asks me like what Kirill does, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
You have a company called 22 Stories, and you share stories through this business. But I'm curious, how would you define what you do now and your business and what you do?
Yeah, actually the 22 Stories is more of a passion project that I'm running. The company that the actual business that I run is called 22 Portraits, which is also has this 22 theme, and they're interrelated, connected. And in fact, end of last year, I also started a new company with a partner, which is called Capsul. And maybe I can tell you a little bit more about that part. Maybe I'll start by introducing to you this new studio setup that I've invented and in fact patented, that allows to capture a conversation of two humans in the most authentic, natural human way, where they look at each other, they only see each other, and at the same time, as you're looking at each other, you're looking straight into the camera that's not visible. It's basically a mirror-based system where you're looking at yourself through a mirror only. You don't see each other directly. And then behind that mirror is like a double-sided mirror. There are two cameras pointing at two subjects that sit at like a 90-degree angle, basically. And so I built a whole studio around this concept, and then so I've been recording different types of conversation, and then creating what I call video portraits for people who would like to tell the story of who they are, what they do, and why they do it in a very authentic, open, human way, where, I guide them, I give them questions, I create safe space for them to really feel natural. And it's certainly a big component, like myself or someone like me is an important component that makes the whole system work. Because if you don't have that person that can create that space who can receive, even that mirror-based system is not going to help you that much. You have to have that level of presence, that level of curiosity to ask really good questions and make them feel understood or feel them being seen and things like that. And so this new company that we started, it's called Capsul. We're utilizing this innovative way of capturing conversations to help families to encapsulate their loved ones, starting with their kind of a more urgent members that needs to be encapsulated in this beautiful way, starting with grandparents and people with terminal illnesses, to really help them tell their story of who they are, what type of experiences they've had. And it's kind of like talking to your grandma and recording it. I've done it with my grandma just with audio. I knew that she's certainly not going to live forever, and getting all of the stories and things from her experience is very important, because typically we have a very low fidelity and resolution of that types of knowledge that we pass through our ancestors. Usually they're just passed through using air and language and just like communicating. No one really like writes it down or haven't been. Now it's a little bit more so, but before that's why we don't really know much about our ancestors, right? Because most of them were probably like illiterate or something like that. At least, certainly for me, like most of my ancestors come from like rural parts of like Eastern, like Russian part there, you know. So a lot of the detail has certainly been lost. And so with this capsule idea, we will be interviewing a lot of older folks and helping them tell their stories in this beautiful, visually appealing way, basically.
I was going to say, because I think...
clients here.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it's interesting because I think people often think, you know, I'll just get a picture on my iPhone or a video on my iPhone. And I was in the photography world and it was the same. It was like, why would you pay a photographer when you can just take an iPhone picture? But the quality, and especially with video, asking certain questions and like the way that you film the content, but also how you edit the content, because you don't just have one camera pointing at the person. You have maybe 2 or 3 different angles. And the way that you edit it all together makes it so poetic and beautiful and engaging, and it's something that
artistic,
people are going to keep.
It's a piece of art.
Artistic. And they're going to keep it forever. And, you know, once that person passes, you'll have a really beautiful memory of them rather than like an iPhone video where there's not great lighting and, you know, something's going on in the background. And it's so important. Like, it's such a beautiful idea. Yeah,
I mean, it's not cameras are... Certainly everyone will have better and better cameras, and we're not competing with, in fact, just the quality of the image. We're more competing on the quality of the content. The human element is the most important. That's basically, it's going to all come down to the human element. In fact, the vision that I have, at least one of the versions, is to have instead of even going to the studio, we will all at some point have some kind of device around us that can capture our 3D representation of us as if like an avatar, a photorealistic avatar that could be transplanted and placed in anywhere else in the world. And you can have like a hologram of another person that's sitting right next to you. And you can't tell visually the difference between the real one and the holographic one. At that point, you know, you can't really compete with quality. Like the companies like Google and Apple will be working on those types of technologies. We're more focusing on the human element, bringing the right people who can create space, like safe spaces, who can ask good questions, who can more of like a coaches type, like those who understand human psychology and you know, those qualities.
Yeah, I really want to acknowledge that because I think you have a real talent to ask questions and good questions, and the way you ask them, I think is just something that you have, honestly, and there's only one you on the planet, and I think this is the magic ingredient in your company. It's not the cameras. It's not. I mean, the system is amazing, but you are the key to this system. I think. I believe that.
Or I mean, I'm just starting it as myself, but let's say my business partner, he's in fact the one who is interviewing all of the grandparents because he's a professional coach. He trained coaches, and he is an amazing space holder himself. He has a great level of awareness, and so just inviting those types of people to impact the world in this way. So, you know,
is it something that's available now for people to go ahead and book, or is it something that's coming in the future? Or
pretty much next. I mean, the website is up. You can see it at your Capsul without the E at the end. Yourcapsul.com is the website. Yeah, I mean, all of the bookings and like things like that, we're literally just connecting the website to the right services where they can click the button and then go through the whole process of booking it. For now, it's only available obviously in Miami because we're here locally. But we are certainly planning to expand to other geographies, and so that will come in later. We'll be doing like a pop-up setups in like retirement homes and things like that, where there's a high density of our client, like perfect customers. Yeah.
One of the way that you're also using your system, I'm going to call it, that you created, is you regularly host events with 10 plus ish people, open-minded people usually, to talk about different topic, and you film them and you interact, and they have the opportunity to share their stories and stuff like that. And a few of our friends went to your events, and we always very enjoy watching those videos, because again, the way you present them and edit them is always a pleasure, even if we know the story. And again, I really love the way you hold and create a space for everyone to share the story, and somehow you always find a way to get people being very vulnerable and raw and open.
Yeah.
And again, that's when the magic happens. And you define it as an authentic story, and it's really true, I think.
Yeah, I think vulnerability is super important in creating deeper human connection. That's where it really happens. Once we really expose our sides that we usually hide because we don't want people to see them. But those are the levels on which we connect deeply, because all of us have those vulnerabilities. And until we really expose them and show people our true humanness, it's harder to deeply connect and really understand that we are here on this journey together, and we're all going through things, challenging things, and we should support each other and help each other in any way we can.
I'm gonna throw a big cliche here, and I really don't mean to offend anyone stuff, but it's a question that came into my mind. I'm going to speak about myself. I have this cliche of, people coming from Eastern Europe, Russia, or Eastern country, having the reputation of being quite cold people. I don't associate vulnerability and stuff like that to this culture, you know? And I don't know, the way you were brought up by your parents and maybe by, your dad and stuff like that, were you surrounded by vulnerable men around you? Were you encouraged to express emotion, or it was more like, you're a boy, you're a man, you don't cry, stuff like that? I'm curious to see where this is coming from.
Yeah, I think it was actually lack of the masculine energy that made me more possess a more feminine energy. My dad wasn't really around too much, so I think I was always surrounded by women, by my sister, my mom, my cousins and stuff. I think that probably played a role, but also, I was I would say, fairly cold person also before moving to the States and really exploring that other aspect of myself, and especially being married to a conscious partner who have a different type of, let's say she grew up in the States, and she's letting me see myself much better, and also being kind of tapped into community of conscious people allows you to see yourself in a much more clear way. So basically, every person works as a mirror. You walk around, and then you've never seen your back because there was no mirror around, and some people can let you feel as if you're like, you've never seen your tail or like some back part. You're like, oh wow, I'm like that too. So that's what. And then those moments usually come during like challenging times where you're like triggered, or there's some kind of emotional spike. Because if everything goes normal, you're not activating those kind of hidden aspects of yourself. Only in moments of some kind of struggle or something that you get to expose them and work through them. But the key here is to really work through them, not just to expose them and press those buttons and then just explode and then not do anything about them, but really consciously work through them. So every time I get triggered by anything, I always try to journal about it and really break it down and understand where this comes from, and like that, so that helps me to improve.
At the beginning, you were explaining how you were very good at being friends with different kind of people, and also you were very good at navigating, I would call it, the spectrum between technology and spirituality.
Yes.
I feel from your background, growing up, you were more tech, science oriented, and maybe along the way on your journey, you've been leaning towards the spiritual side. Is that something? Is that the case, or the spirituality was there early on? When did the spirituality come into your life, basically? I guess that's my question.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you got it right the first. So basically, I was very much operating from my head, from my rational mind, and just adapting to the environment based on what I see, what I hear, processing information. It wasn't really through processing experiences through my heart, per se. How did it all started? I think everything that comes into my life happens very much gradually and very much without much pain or discomfort. So basically, there's another connection between the speed at which you're trying to create change or create change. It's directly tied to the level of discomfort that you will experience. And so the faster you want it, the more struggle you have to go through. It's like it's basically like a thick honey. So it has a natural flow of, let's say it's a cup of honey, and then you pour it out, and it takes a really long time to start pouring, and the consistency and just knowing that it's gonna drip, that's the key. But if you're starting to mess with it, it's gonna get just super messy all around, and you're not going with the natural flow of things. And so I forgot what I was going with. It was like basically not for me. With the spirituality. So it's I find myself often in the states of moving slower than I would say an average. I don't know what that average even mean. But I'm a fairly slow person when it comes down to new, like adopting a new knowledge or like learning something new. For example, my wife, she's super fast. Like she played, that's why I don't like playing video games, because it's all about like your response reaction. I'm very slow, like that. I can't really make quick decisions like that. But my strength is in like deep thinking and making decisions that incorporate many different aspects and variables, and taking my time to drop into the intuition, like accessing that part of me. Certainly started from being much more in my head and my kind of rational mind, and then over the years I've noticed an emergence of this new me that was interested in exploring the spiritual aspects of myself more. A big kind of leapfrog jump into that direction was a few ayahuasca ceremonies that I've got to sit with in California. So that gave me certainly a new powerful perspective on my spirituality, on my connection to the source, and everyone being part of that whole united organism. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, you did.
It does. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kirill. If people would like to contact you just to say hi, or maybe dive into your... Oh, by the way, why 22? Sorry.
I was going to ask that. That was going to be my last question. Why 22? Where did that come from?
Yeah, and it's especially a relevant question in 2022, right? So basically, both, it just happened to be, and in fact, that's the moment when I started paying closer attention to this number. When both my wife and I met, we discovered that both of us are born on the 22nd. And, of different months. And then we started dating also on the 22nd. And then from there, I kind of went with the theme of 22nd. I proposed on the 22nd, and we got married on the 22nd. And then when we moved to Miami from San Francisco, from Oakland area, we were just looking for a place to live. We didn't really... certainly weren't having the 22 thing in mind. We were just like looking for the optimal price, location type of situation. And then we happened to be living on 2nd Street and 2nd Avenue as our first place when we were moving. So the 22 is just such an important now number that's a guiding light that I interpreted as just show me that I'm on the right track. So anything that's related to 22, I'm paying closer attention. Often when people mention 22, I was like, okay, I need to pay attention to whatever they're saying. And that's why 22 stories, 22 portraits, all of I have a bunch of other domain names registered with 22 to kind of see what maybe at some point I'll do some other projects related to 22. Up. And then, this year is certainly our year for sure.
Did you do something special on the 22nd of February, 2022, this year?
Yeah. We, my wife and I took a day off, and then we did a little microdosing, and we went to the zoo.
Oh, nice.
That was a cool experience. Yeah, it was just a really nice, pleasant day, spending together, enjoying each other, enjoying the nature, things like that, biking around. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, good.
Mm-hmm.
So I will make sure to link all your different Instagrams and stories and websites stories in the description and show notes, so people can see your work and reach out to you. And also I will personally check out the capsule that I haven't seen yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great in here.
I've got one last question we ask everyone, and I'm going to tweak it a little bit this time because of what you do. Usually we ask... our classic question is, if you could have a conversation with anyone, dead or alive, that you think is the most interesting person, who would you pick and why? But with you, I would tweak it into, who would be the most interesting person you would love to have in a studio?
Yeah, I have a clear answer. Terence McKenna is that person. If you haven't heard of Terence McKenna, definitely check him out. So he was this ethnobotanist intellectual in 80s or 90s. I think he died in 90s or something. And he was a big proponent of psychedelics, conscious use of psychedelics, psychedelic mushrooms and other plant medicines. And he was very eloquent with his language. In fact, when you're talking about psychedelic topics, you have to be extremely precise with your language, because if you're not, then you're not getting anywhere. You're talking about very abstract, complex, conceptual structures. that you have to be able to wrap your language around it. In fact, if you can't wrap your language around a concept, then you cannot comprehend it. It's beyond your comprehension. And so he was extremely good with his ability to communicate and wrap his language around complex ideas and concepts. Yeah.
Never heard that one before.
No, thank you.
It's interesting when we ask this because we always get different people every time.
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've listened to hundreds of hours of his lectures. His ideas and views are certainly influencing the way I think and the way I communicate with others, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And he was certainly a big proponent of also technology and spirituality. Actually, I think that's one of the also main reasons why I resonate with everything that he's saying. He's a very kind of like a cohesive, like, so basically combining all of the things and not really disregarding any of them. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to have a look.
Check it out.
Yeah. Sounds interesting. Thank you so much for spending this time to talk to us and to share your story and to get to know you more. It's been brilliant. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks,
thank
guys.
you once again. And thank you everyone for listening and watching this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you found value into it. And we'll see you next Wednesday with a brand new episode as usual. Bye.
Bye.